Okay, thank you everybody for being here. I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Trustees to order, October 27th. Could we have the roll, please?
Village President Torpy.
Here.
Trustee Clark.
Pause here.
Trustee Collum.
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford is absent. Trustee Levison.
Present.
Trustee Rosner.
Here.
Trustee Schnall.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Everybody's mics
Mr.
are on.
Lerner is not here. Mr. Rother. Susan Caljean, present.
Are you picking up the audio here? Oh.
She's too quiet.
Okay, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the press in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6. In addition, notice of this meeting was posted in Village Hall and on the Village website and has been filed in the office of the Village Clerk. Official action may be taken. Susan Caljean, Village Clerk. Resolution 2014-283, resolution authorizing an executive session at the October 27, 2014 meeting of the Board of Trustees.
The matters to be discussed in executive session are Third and Valley parking deck and taxes, which is attorney-client privilege and a contract negotiation. South Orange Fire Department's succession plan, which is personnel and attorney-client privilege, and payroll schedule, which is personnel and attorney-client privilege. Do I have a motion?
Could we add litigation update, Mary Lawn of the Oranges?
Okay.
That's attorney-client privilege and litigation.
Okay.
I move.
Okay, moved by Trustee Collum, seconded by Trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, abstentions? Back here at 8.
Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for being here. I'd like to call this meeting back to order. Could we please have the roll?
Village President Torpey.
Here.
Trustee Clark.
Here?
Trustee Column.
Here.
Trustee Davis Ford is absent. Trustee Levinson. Trustee Rosner.
Here.
Trustee Schnall.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Lerner is absent. Mr. Rother.
Here.
Susan Caljean, present.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please stay standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. First, before I formally get started with the announcements, I want to make sure to give a huge thanks to not only Trustee Column and the chair of the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, Scott Egelberg, but also all the members of the committee and all the seniors who came out yesterday here at SOPAC. We just had an incredible turnout of a very active and creative demographic of our community that gave us some feedback about what we could do better to help provide services for them, and it had some ideas about how we could all kind of work together and keep doing this. So the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee has been sort of recently reactivated, re-energized, and they're doing some really amazing work. So we do have the video of that we're going to post up on our website online as well. But it was a great event, so thank you, Trustee Column, and everybody else for all of your work on that. If folks are interested in volunteering, we still have a couple different, we always have a few different places where we are more than happy to take anybody who's interested in contributing and finding the best way to get you fit into our village. And so if you are interested in doing that, you can go to our website at southorange.org. You can also email any one of us and just let us know what you're interested in getting involved in, and we'll try and find the best way to plug you in. Another reminder about SO Connect. If you are watching this and you, anybody at home especially, and you have a smartphone and you have not downloaded the SO Connect app yet, please do so. You can go to the iTunes or Google Play Store and download, search for SO Connect, and that will allow you to be able to submit service requests directly to the village. And we've had almost 2,000 requests come in through the application, and it's a great way to route whatever your issue is or concern is directly to the department that's responsible for fixing it. So instead of emailing one of us and then we email somebody else and then the email chain gets lost over time, or having to call and constantly get transferred, the best way to do that is you can visit our website at southorange.org/311, or again, you can download the mobile app. So if you're out around town and you want to be a super helpful eyes-on-the-ground citizen, which we rely on for Neighborhood Watch, and we rely on for so many different reasons, you could just take a picture on your phone, upload it to the app, and it goes straight to whatever department is responsible for fixing that. So we definitely encourage folks to use that whenever possible. Just a reminder that leaf collection is starting today and will go through December 6th, so please try and place your leaves not too far out into the street, really kind of on the curb, so it doesn't get in the way of traffic. We will be collecting those leaves through December 6th. We're pleased to announce the exhibition opening of Tableau, the latest exhibition at the Piero Gallery in South Orange. The show explores the changing meaning of the dinner table through photography, collage, painting, craft, and sculpture. The show is open from October 30th to November 26th, and the opening reception is October 30th from 7 to 9 p.m., and that's at the Piero Gallery, which is at the Baird Center at 5 Meade Street. We definitely encourage everybody to check that out. Registration begins November 1st at the Baird for winter classes and programs. There's art and dance classes for adults and children that will begin in January, and some winter sports that will begin the first week of December. So if you're interested in finding more information out about that, you can go to southorange.org/thebaird. This Wednesday is the last farmers market of the season. So if you haven't been down to the farmers market yet, please check it out, Sloan Street and First Street, and that's Wednesday from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. And this one is a little bit special because there will be pumpkin decorating for the kids, and I also suppose for the adults, if that's what you're interested in. A big reminder for the annual Halloween festival at Spooky Spiota Park, and that's this Friday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. The South Orange Village Center Alliance is putting this together, and they're going to have a free gift for everybody in a costume. There's the costume parade, and of course, the annual costume contest, which I still, to this day, claim is one of the hardest parts of this job, being a judge in that contest and having to somehow narrow down all of the incredible costumes. So people should definitely come out at Spooky Spiota Park, and that is from 4 to 6 p.m. on Friday. At this time, I'd like to present a proclamation tonight that I'll quickly read through. And this is a proclamation for Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, which is in November. So whereas in 2014, an estimated 46,420 people will be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in the United States, and 39,590 will die from the disease. Whereas pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest cancers, is the fourth leading cause of cancer death in the United States, and is the only major cancer with a 5-year relative survival rate in the single digits at just 6%. Whereas when symptoms of pancreatic cancer present themselves, it is in the late stage, and 73% of pancreatic cancer patients die within the first year, while 94% die within the first 5 years. Whereas approximately 1,220 deaths will occur in New Jersey in 2014. The incidence and death rate for pancreatic cancer are increasing, and pancreatic cancer is anticipated to move from the fourth to the second leading cause of cancer death in the United States by 2020. The U.S. Congress passed the Recalcitrant Cancer Research Act last year, which calls on the National Cancer Institute to develop scientific frameworks or strategic plans for pancreatic cancer and other deadly cancers, which will help provide the strategic direction and guidance needed to make true progress against these diseases. And whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network is the national organization serving the pancreatic cancer community in the Township of South Orange Village and nationwide through a comprehensive approach that includes public policy, research funding, patient services, and public awareness and education related to developing effective treatments and a cure for pancreatic cancer. Whereas the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network and its affiliates in South Orange support those patients currently battling pancreatic cancer, as well as those who have lost their lives to the disease and are committed to nothing less than a cure. Whereas the good health and well-being of the residents of the Township of South Orange Village are enhanced as a direct result of the increased awareness about pancreatic cancer and research into early detection, causes, and effective treatments. Therefore, be it proclaimed that the Board of Trustees of the Township of South Orange Village designate the month of November 2014 as Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in the Township of South Orange Village. I know if you'd like to come up and say a few words, please feel free.
Speaking of the mic a little. It's more for the recording at home and the TV stream than we can hear you, but yeah, he's flashing us.
Go for it.
On behalf of the North Jersey affiliate of the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, we would like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm here today because my father, Lenny Bolello, succumbed to pancreatic cancer in 2010 after a miraculous 6-year battle. A couple of things. I know that Village President Torby read the proclamation. I think it's really astonishing that the fact that pancreatic cancer will be the second leading cause of cancer death by 2020. Do the math. That's in 6 years. So it's very important that this awareness is really spread, and we really appreciate it. So we'd like to thank the South Orange Board of Trustees for your important contribution to this national fight against pancreatic cancer by declaring November 2014 to be Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month in South Orange. You are helping us do the critical work of making the public aware of this disease and its truly lethal nature. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
I have a question, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious because I'm familiar with, unfortunately, with the disease. I have some friends who have had to go through it. The List Garden, and there's a couple of awareness groups that do walks and stuff. Do we have any local walks like that?
We do. It's funny that you mention it. If you go to the site, it's pancan.org, so pancan.org. There is a walk-run. It's a 5K, November the 9th in Parsippany. And it's actually really fun. All the kids come out, and that's really a good time.
Is that through the List Garden?
That's not through Lust Garden. That's through the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. Lust Garden Foundation is different, but both contribute to pancreatic cancer awareness.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would like to ask Essex County Surrogate, who is here tonight to talk a little bit about what his office has been up to. So welcome to Ted Stevens.
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, all members. Thank you once again for allowing me to come and to bring greetings on behalf of the Essex County Surrogates Court. You know, one of the things, I've been a surrogate, this is my third year now, and so this is the third time I've come before you, and time flies when you're having fun. It barely seems like 3 years. In fact, when I was telling some colleagues, some friends who have some state positions, they continually just insist that I have the best job in the county. They said the surrogate is just a great place, Ted, lucky, good for you. And so they wonder actually why I need to come out, because they said, Ted, nobody knows what the surrogate does. And in fact, I found that out firsthand when I was campaigning. And I would, after giving a, usual half-hour, 45-minute political dissertation about myself, and then immediately thereafter, the first question would be, what's your name again? And the second question is just, what is the surrogate? And so it became very clear that I needed to come out to explain what we do, because the surrogate is a judge, and I preside over the surrogate's court, the only elected judge in the state of New Jersey. And the court handles the several things, most known for the probate of wills and administration of non-will estates. Also handle the processing of adoption applications, since we serve as the assistant deputy clerk to the Superior Court of New Jersey, and also handle the administration of over $40 million of trust funds for minors funds until they reach the age of 18. And also, we handle the administration of guardianship applications, which is particularly important because with the graying of the baby boomers, there is a marked increase in the number of guardianship complaints which are filed. And that's an area I'd just like to spend a minute talking to you about, because if I'm out in the public, the minimum I can do is to give some information which may save some anguish to some families. And guardianships are, as I say, on the rise. There's so much that the Supreme Court Chief Justice Radner has tasked every surrogate to be much more vigilant about monitoring reports which guardians are obligated to provide, because so many more are being filed. But for the layman particularly, a guardianship application is a court case. I mean, it is the filing of a complaint in order to show cause. There are affidavits from witnesses. You need at least 2 doctors to certify that the person is in need of guardianship. You need an attorney for that. You file the complaint, there's a waiting period, and of course, because there's an attorney involved, it can be expensive. So that, many people don't know, can be totally obviated if the family were to take the opportunity to have a $500 power of attorney drawn up at a time when the person is in good mental and physical health, such that they can give their consent. So you have on one hand this $500 power of attorney versus a potentially $5,000 long-term court case. Let me say, okay, $500, you get a chance to choose the person who you want, and it happens instantaneously, or $5,000 after a many-month court case. You can see the difference. So all of that can be avoided if people do a little planning for their estate. So one of the things we've tried to do is to really be mindful of that and tell the public about it. In fact, last week I had the pleasure of partnering with Congressman Donald Payne and also Congressman Sirius in promoting National Awareness Week for estate planning. It was actually passed by Congress in 2008, just starting to gain some traction, and I think next year we're going to have a much more robust commemoration of the week. It's not a month quite yet. We're not that big yet. We're working toward a month, but we'll start with a week. Because anything that gets the public more aware about the need for estate planning, it's not just for wealthy individuals, but just for the example which I gave, can help a family of modest means even avoid some angst in a very difficult situation. So that is one thing we're looking to do. Now, with regard to the Surrogates Court in Essex specifically, we've tried our best to just really continue the excellent service which the court has provided over many, many years. As you know, the Surrogate's a constitutional office, so we don't necessarily work for either the county administration or the freeholders, but in fact we work with them to make sure that the level of service to Essex County is second to none. Upon my first year coming in as surrogate, we wanted to become more accessible to the public, so we offered extended hours for the public. So we continue today, and on the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, you can come into the Surrogates Court in Newark, be seen with an appointment so that you don't have to take time necessarily off from your job up until 6:30 in the evening. And so you can be seen at time certain, come in, not take off work. It's been a real benefit for the public, and it's particularly important because it seems to me it's the only time you can come to the great city of Newark and not have to pay for parking, because the employee lot is open, and that obviously has been somewhat attractive. So what we wanted to do last year, in order to continue the movement of the office, we made our website much more robust. It's www.essexsurrogate.com, and it has a feature which many attorneys and citizens have found helpful, in that every form that we use at the Surrogates Court is available on the website. You can download it. In fact, you can fill it out on the website, print it out, and bring it into the court with you, again, saving quite a bit of time for the public. So this year, of course, I'm a big believer in what Janet Jackson said, you know, what have you done for me lately? As everybody knows, all elected officials, sometimes we're tasked with that. So what we're trying to do is to offer an enhanced level of service for individuals who may live in the western part of the county and may find it difficult to come to Newark. So we're working with the county now, with the administration, to solidify the opening of a satellite office, which we think are going to be able to open at the Cody Arena in West Orange. So it's kind of halfway for this wonderful town, for individuals who either want to go to Newark or want to go there. It will provide an option, obviously much more beneficial for folks living in the western part of the county. And so we're going to have a certain time when we're hopefully going to be able to provide every service there, which we would do in the Surrogates Court. So we're moving toward that right now. So right now the Surrogates Court is alive and well. We're doing, I think, good work for the citizens, but we are going to experience a loss, unfortunately. This is a picture, and I'll leave my flyers with you, which should talk about our extended hours. This is our entire staff. There's 14 of us. Well, actually, the newest member is not here. There's 13. But in the 175 years of experience which this flyer touts, 51 are held by one young lady. And Mrs. Doris Guy is finally going to retire after 51 years of service to Essex County. So we are going to miss her. She's going to be very hard to replace, but we will do our best. So that's the report, Mr. Council President, for the Surrogates Court and members of council. If you have any questions, I'm available for them at this time.
I have one question. This is great around the awareness. Are there utilities, whether online or do they have to go into your office, for citizens who are of moderate means to fill out estate plans, and I assume includes wills and such like that? Are there lower costs rather than retaining an expensive attorney?
Well, there are some private sites, not through the Surrogates Court. Since we serve as a court, we don't get involved in giving legal advice and that sort of thing, and that comes way too close to that line. There are some sites which tout themselves as making or being available to provide wills and other documents. I think that some of them may serve some purposes, but many times you need an attorney to really have that interaction. You don't have the back and forth and the question asking that all attorneys are trained to do. So there are some available, though they're not hard to find. None of them I particularly recommend, but I know that I've seen some attorneys that have been, or some individuals who bring in wills where they have been drawn on those sites, and most of them have been okay. But most of the wills that are presented have been drawn up by attorneys. The good estate plan, I will say, probably consists of 3 documents. Minimally, I call them the big 3. One being the will, which is the document, the only document that's available to speak for you after you passed on. The power of attorney, which is more of the financial document that I spoke about. And then the living will, which is, of course, a medical document. And the curious thing about the living will, because a lot of people say, well, the hospital gives me that. So yeah, they always give you that document just before you're going in for that operation. So are you really thinking as clearly as you might at that time, or more of a sobering moment when you're watching the Giants win, on the rare occasion that happens? So you really need to handle those, again, at home or somewhere, your lawyer's office, whatever, when you are not in an anxious situation. And I dare say that's not the best time to do it when you're in the hospital thinking about that procedure that's upcoming.
Okay. Thank you for coming in and sharing that with us tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Lewis, did you want to run through the best practices checklist?
Certainly. For those of you who I assume are aware, and then member of the public, the best practices worksheet is a thing that was implemented by the state probably 3-4 years ago. It is a mechanism where they make recommendations of certain best practices that are recommended for towns. Towns are required to respond, and depending on the score that you get, if you need to get a certain percentile or there is a possible reduction of a relatively small but nonetheless meaningful portion of state aid. We completed our checklist. It's a total of 50 questions. There is a requirement that we briefly discuss the checklist and our responses with a specific emphasis on responses that would be a no. So I'm not going to go through in a nutshell. Out of the 50 questions, we do not stand to lose any state aid. We had 32 yeses, 9 nos, 7 not applicable, and 2 prospective. Generally, the not applicable are, given the context of the question, they don't apply. Some relate to, one example is if your assessed ratio is below 65%, are you considering a reassessment? Ours is not, so the answer is not applicable. Another one that came to mind is it's not applicable. There is a question whether you're exploring cooperative energy purchasing, but if you already do it, then it's a not applicable. We've already done that a few years ago. Trustee Levison took the lead, and we are currently in a cooperative energy purchasing for both electric and we also went out on the market for natural gas. So, and then the number of ones that are yes. So I'll just briefly try and touch on the ones that are no with a brief explanation of what they are and where we see them going in the future. So with the list in front of you, the first one that's a no is number 15. And the specific recommendation is that address all audit findings from the prior year's audit to ensure that they don't repeat. We did have a couple of them. They're identified in the comments that have repeated. They relate to the water capital improvement, recreation software, and an issue with the IRS taxability of clothing allowances and LoSAP funds. We're addressing those, and I'm confident that the software we're currently exploring and we'll be going out to RFP for the water improvement. It was an old authorization from almost 20 years ago. That's getting resolved. The payroll has been adjusted to ensure that clothing allowances are properly identified on the W-2 forms. And the LoSAP fund in the remittal of those in part was driven by the submittal of the report by the volunteer agency. So we've worked with them to work those issues out and make sure that they submit basically the eligibility form in a timely fashion so that we can pay them on time. Number 18 relates to the completion of the annual audit within the first 6 months. As you're all aware, this year was a little bit longer, and I'll touch on the reasons because it also addresses a couple of the others. So They largely relate to the transition with the new CFO, so that the auditors, there was some difficulty in sort of sorting through the prior accounts and how things were set up with the new CFO. We're confident going forward that he has the accounts in order and things will be done, and that won't be an issue again. Number 28 relates to, and this is an issue we have discussed in the Finance Committee and I think with the full board, but it has not quite gotten done, and we will ensure that this year it does get done. And this relates to having a formal written policy on a surplus policy. As you know, our surplus has been somewhat of a challenge in the last few years as we weaned away from a prior budget year where some excess funds were used and had to be replaced. But that's one that I'm confident that we will, with the Finance Committee, develop that written policy. So that'll be addressed next year. Number 33 and 34 relate to both the introduction and the adoption of the budget being done within the time frames set and or extended by the DCA. In both instances where, as you're aware, we were prepared and had our budget prepared to go, but part of the budget document involves the historic data from the prior year, which is done by the auditors. And again, as I alluded to, because of the transition with a new CFO and sort of sorting through the accounts under the prior year and the prior CFO, there was a delay in getting those numbers. And one other wrinkle we did get thrown was that past due pension bill that we got in March. But again, with the new CFO, the new accounts being in order, and the new CFO knowing exactly how things are accounted for, I know the auditors are extremely pleased with the new set of accounting and the way things are being done, so that I'm confident those won't repeat again next year. Number 35 involves continuation of health care benefits for part-time employees. Under the laws, there was a certain period where certain part-time employees who got benefits prior to a certain date were grandfathered. We're in the process of weaning away from that, and that will occur before next year, so that one won't repeat again. Number 39, this is an interesting one that we will explore. I'm not 100% sure I agree with it, but it depends on the circumstances. Essentially, the state previously, in an effort to allow towns to save money, allowed you to provide an opt-out payment to employees who had coverage from a spouse, for example. The state's apparent belief now is that with the full implementation of the employee contributions, that making that contribution is sufficient disincentive that people will voluntarily get off and just use their spouse's coverage, and you wouldn't have to pay an opt-out incentive. Really, this is the first year that we've had the full contribution. I certainly, as it was being phased in, I'm not sure if that was the case, and I think you would find yourself in where, depending on what the other party's coverage was, is it better to have double coverage versus deductibles and co-pays? That's something we will certainly look at and recommend.
In regard to that area, because on a county level, I've been sitting through some meetings, and regarding exactly this scenario, and they have offered an opt-out, but they had to do it with an incentive. And if I may be off a little bit about the numbers. I believe for a single person, if you opt out, an individual, if you showed that you had coverage elsewhere, it was like $2,000. And for a married couple, it was like $4,000, but you had to prove you had coverage, through your spouse or whatever. And I think this opt-out was first offered 2 years ago, maybe 3 at the most. And it was not too many people took advantage of it at first, and now the number is slightly over 300 people. And, out of a population of, maybe 3,000 employees. And again, I'm just giving a gross number. It's not, 300, it may not seem like a lot, but it really is a lot when you look at the financial impact of those individuals opting out. So I guess the point being is that you may not get people to opt out without a carrot, but it would still be whatever price, monetary stipend you give them for opting out, you would determine along with the CFO, but it may be the only way you can get some movement on that.
Oh, and-
to
and
the
I-
point that it makes a financial impact
Right,
to
and
the
I agree,
bottom
and
line.
that's where I had indicated that I'm not, the state's rationale is that simply paying the contribution will be a sufficient disincentive that people will opt out voluntarily without any economic incentive. Again, the contributions have just now been fully phased in, so people are paying more than they did 3 years ago if you're only paying 25% or 20%. The other dynamic of this is the way the contribution formula is struck. It is dependent on, A, the type of coverage you have, but also your income bracket. So
Yep.
certainly the more you make, your contribution is substantially higher. It may provide a greater incentive to opt out voluntarily, where if you're in a lower income position and your contribution is, perhaps $1,000 or less, then it may make more sense. You're going to say, well, let's have two coverages. We'll avoid all the co-pays, all the. So it's just something we will continue to look at. Ultimately, we're going to do what's best for the town, and if we continue to take a no on that question because we disagree with the state's assessment, we'll do that, and it won't, be enough to affect our score.
But the other driver, your point is well made, is that people are now paying contribution at a level that they hadn't have to pay
Right,
before.
it has phased in, and it certainly, it's increased for everybody, so I do think that would, gradually increase the incentive to get out without any other incentive, but we'll continue to monitor it. Number 44 is, the question is whether your municipality's instituted policy to not compensate for sick leave accumulated after a certain date. We weren't sure exactly the wording of this. If you totally take it literally, we thought we had to answer it no, but we have made great strides in capping sick leave payouts, including well before the state legislation went into place. We have limited accruals. We have done, gone to great lengths in terms of independently making sure sick leave is legitimately used, et cetera. But the way the question was worded, we weren't 100% certain, but we are certainly working 100% towards what I think is the underlying goal of that statement. Lastly, number 49, this relates to longevity, and we do still have some contracts that have provisions for longevity. It's obviously something that we always look at to get out of the contract, quite frankly. We will look at it prospectively going forward. We've had some bigger issues that we thought more important to negotiate first. It stands to reason that with existing employees, the only way they're going to give it up is if you just roll that amount of money into their salary, because they're not just going to voluntarily walk away from money. But certainly to implement, and we will be taking that into account in future collective bargainings. But as it sits right now, some of the contracts still have it in there. So that was the brief rundown of our responses. Again, we were obligated to do so under the regulations. We had to have a public hearing, explain it. We scored sufficiently high we're not going to be subject to losing any state aid. I do think a number of these will be addressed and cured so that we'll do even better next year. And so unless anyone had any questions.
I do. Are any of those recommendations recurring? In other words, are these recommendations, have they been?
A couple of them have repeated. Some of them, those that are like brand new recommendations. For example, there's one in there which was a new recommendation, so you were allowed to say prospective. There's a recommendation that where you have a separate authority or special district, in our case it'd be the parking authority, there's a recommendation covering body annually evaluate the continuing role, need, and purpose. That had never been a recommendation, so you were allowed to say, you didn't have to say no, because you could say, no, but we hadn't thought of it, so it's prospective, we will do that. So that will certainly be our recommendation, that we
And I'm not really concerned with the new ones.
Right.
I'm concerned with the ones that are repetitive. And not to belabor it here, we don't have to really go into it here.
Sure.
It's just that I would like attention to be given to those things that are we're being given recommendations on year after year after year. That would be my area of concern.
And I would say probably the ones that would tend to have been repeated in the last few years, in part related to this whole, the method of accounting and the timing and when books got closed out in it. And I think we've taken a significant step forward in that regard, and I don't think you'll see those repeat again.
Thank you.
I did have a question on the longevity. Do new employees qualify for longevity? I thought they were excluded.
Yeah, they do not, well, no non-union employees get it, period. And in one of the underlying there is, but it's capped at like a dollar amount, like $500 instead of percentage of salary. So there are some, it does vary from union to union. I can get you a complete synopsis of which ones, but in every case it is restricted and not as favorable as older employees, but it wasn't completely eliminated, so we couldn't answer yes to the question.
Thank you. Okay. All right, at this time, I'd like to open the meeting up for public comments. Okay. Seeing as there is no member of the public who wishes to speak, I have to close public comments and move on to the approval of minutes. We've got minutes from September 8th conference meeting and September 22nd regular meeting. Can I have a motion?
I move.
Moved by Trustee Levison, seconded by Trustee Davis-Ford. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstention on, it's either September 8th or the 23rd, one of the meetings I wasn't at. I don't have it in front of me right now. So whichever meeting I wasn't present.
Okay. Okie dokie. We have one ordinance for first reading.
Ordinance 2014-21, introduction and first reading of an ordinance to request the County of Essex to lower the speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25 on a portion of South Orange Avenue from Ward Place to North Ridgewood Road.
Thank you. This is fairly self-explanatory. We discussed it in the last meeting, but just asking the county to lower the speed limit a little bit as people are driving through downtown. One of the components of what we have certainly talked about as far as trying to make the downtown a little bit more pedestrian friendly. Unless there's any further comments or questions on this, could I have a motion?
I'll move.
Oh, wow. That's a popular one. Trustee Collum moves, seconded by
Me.
Trustee me. Trustee Schnall. Could we have the roll, please?
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Collum?
Yes.
Trustee Davis-Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
Thank you.
I move that ordinance 2014-21 be scheduled for a second reading and final passage at the November 24th, 2014 board meeting, and a public hearing be held at that time for the reference ordinance, and the village clerk be authorized to take the necessary action to publish public notice for such hearing.
Okay, moved by Trustee Davis-Ford,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Collum. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Let's move on to the consent agenda.
Three resolutions, number 284 through 294 are on the consent agenda. I just have one change on Resolution 288 to please add Public Safety Chair to that resolution.
So that's a resolution that's appointing members to the Local Emergency Planning Committee. That is a committee that is run out of the Office of Emergency Management that meets quarterly and as needed to discuss and implement emergency preparedness efforts. So we're going through a bunch of housekeeping items. The CERT resolution, the last meeting was one. This is another, and we've got some deputy OEM appointments coming too. Just making sure that everything is all taken care of and updated.
I also had a question on that one. I was wondering, there doesn't appear to be any kind of a rep from the police department.
Their own deputy OEM coordinators.
So the deputy,
sorry?
There didn't seem to be a rep from the police department
On the
in that
LEPC?
list.
It's
Yeah.
noted as deputy OEM coordinators where you have the police and fire chief.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't
right.
specifically
'Cause they're
note.
each of the chiefs are also the deputy coordinators, but they're also each representing their departments.
Okay.
Any questions, comments on any consent agenda items?
Yes. On 292, I had asked if we could get a copy of the evaluation matrix. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, well, I don't think we had a formal matrix prepared, but I can certainly summarize it, and Trustee Collum participated in the process as well. In short, we went out for an RFP for architectural service and assessment of the police department headquarters building, received a total of 11 responses ranging from as low as just below $10,000 to over $50,000. After reviewing them all with the recommendations of the village engineer as well, myself, We identified 3 to bring in for interviews. 2 of them were the 2 lowest, and then there were 3 or 4 in between that either did not have sufficient demonstrated experience in public safety buildings and police headquarters in particular, given the very specific regulations applicable strictly to police headquarters, Department of Justice regulations, Department of Corrections regulations on the cells, et cetera. And in one instance, at least, I know the particular firm was in Pennsylvania, and there was a concern about the distance. We brought the 3 firms in, and I think what became readily apparent to the entire committee was the 2 lower-priced firms. So we had 2 very low, and then we had a bunch all bunched up in the mid-20s. The 2 lower-priced firms, it was pretty apparent, I think, and certainly Trustee Collum could weigh in as well, that what they envisioned, the level of assessment that we wanted undertaken, was not what we intended. Specifically, we had, I think very clearly in the RFP, explained that one of the conditions we were most concerned about was water intrusion. Ultimately, the recommended firm, as you will see, and I think is attached, I think understood that and proposed and actually brought a geotechnical engineer to the interview, proposed and included in their proposal test drilling and wells and subsurface investigation, where the other firms, when we talked about it, it appeared they were going to go look in the basement and see where the water was. So, and that was just one level of the level of detail, the level of intensity, and ultimately I think what the group, which again consisted of myself, chair of the Public Safety Committee, the village engineer, a representative of the Development Committee, who himself is an architect, Brian Nesson, the purchasing agent, unanimously decided this was the best fit. There's also a strong local tie, a lot of knowledge, I think, of the building, a lot of knowledge of the community, some of the concerns, and, so that's sort of, I guess, the verbal matrix. Certainly if Trustee Collum wants to weigh in as well.
The other question I had was, are we passing just Phase 1?
Just Phase 1, and Phase 2, just for those of you that read it, we asked for, in part to get a sense of where people were coming from, but they were not bound by it, nor were we bound to accept it, was what would you charge and what would be sort of your standard fees for Phase 2, which would be, once we get the completed assessment, and assuming it recommends, which we expect it will, certain level of work to be done on the building. Phase 2 would be to prepare those specifications, the drawings, the documents, and then administer the contract through the construction phase. We did ask firms to provide us with that. They were largely what seemed to be sort of the industry standard. Some of the lower ones had noticeably lower numbers. I think there was a collective concern that part of that is sort of a lost leader because they knew they weren't stuck with it. So throw a low number in, it's going to get our attention. But part of it, I think we also thought was reflective of the level of assessment and not including geotechnical engineers, not addressing some of those things. So ultimately, if we complete the assessment with the current firm and we're satisfied with the recommendations, we will then at that point be in a position to negotiate and finalize a Phase 2 agreement.
Okay. So it's specifically not including Phase 2.
Correct.
We can go out for another bid.
Correct. Or continue with the same one if we were satisfied.
Based upon the numbers that he put in the proposal, or?
We won't be obligated to.
Okay.
It'd be negotiated.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the consent agenda?
The only one I would like to just call out, just for a specific comment, is 2014-290. And I just want to recognize Glenn Savage is a deputy chief in the fire department. He served in that capacity, previously titled fire captain, but also still the number 2 in command position. He's been in that capacity for almost 20 years, I think in excess of 20 years now, which is pretty startling. Well over 30 years with the department. Just been a model officer in the department. Because of the timing and where different people came in, the opportunity for him to serve in a full chief's capacity just didn't match up. We had Chief Markey for a long tenure, but Glenn is just really a credit to the department, and we're thrilled to be able to at least put him in because he's also retiring. He's up against the age limit, but he will and has graciously agreed to serve as the acting fire chief, and I just wanted to recognize him and commend him for his service and point that one out.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Move.
Motion moved by Trustee Collum,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Clark. Could we have the roll, please?
Trustee Collum?
Yes.
Trustee Davis Ward?
Yes.
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Levison?
Yes, I move the bills list audited by the CFO and distributed to the board prior to this meeting.
If I could, just one addition to that, it was brought to my attention this afternoon, the South Orange Village Center Alliance on their quarterly drawdown, apparently the invoice did not make it to finance to make the bills list, but rather than make them wait a month for that, I'd like to add that. It's their quarterly assessment total, which includes the assessments that we pass through from the businesses plus the village's contributions, $55,500. I'd like to, if possible, add that to the bills list tonight, with no objection.
A second.
Just as a side note, I see it says treasurer. I don't think we have the title treasurer anymore.
It's still on the books.
I thought we eliminated it. Okay.
So moved by Trustee Levison, seconded by Trustee Schnall. Could we have the roll call, please?
Trustee Davis-Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Levison?
Yes.
Trustee Rosner?
Yes.
Trustee Schnall?
Yes.
Trustee Clark?
Yes.
Trustee Collins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to open the meeting up again for public comments. Is there anybody who wishes to speak? You know what to do.
Can't wait to hear my name this week. Oh, yeah.
Hold your tongue. Good evening. My name is Lisa Adams. I'm a longtime resident. I'm asking you tonight to make Officer Grasmere Sergeant. I'm asking you to promote Officer Grasmere to be Sergeant in the South Orange Police Department.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to comment? Okay, I'd like to close public comments. There's not much I can do to respond to that comment. Unfortunately, we can't really discuss motions, personnel matters like that. But thank you for the comment. Unless there's any other new business or anything else, I would ask for a motion to adjourn. Before we do adjourn, just a reminder that if anybody is interested, we are adjourning this meeting and continuing our planning meeting from last week over at our offices at 76 South Orange Avenue. So we can have a little bit more of a discussion environment. So if there's anybody at home who wants to come out for that, please feel free. So with that being said,
I move.
Moved by Trustee Collins,
Second.
second by Trustee Levison. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.